Chainsaw Man is back on the channel, and I think there's no better way to start than by talking about one of the most reserved popular characters who also recently had a movie all to herself. It's no exaggeration to say that the Reze arc is one of the best in Chainsaw Man as a whole. Not to mention, of course, that it contains thousands of hidden symbols, a really great story, and is captivating from start to finish with all its mysteries. By the way, I probably don't even need to say it, but this video is going to be full of spoilers. I also wanted to take a moment today to recommend a little project by my friend Franas, who made a fan-made story about Reze, where he created a whole cute backstory for her and gave meaning to a lot of things about Reze that we never got to see on screen. And that's really interesting, especially because Fujimoto's writing style is extremely open-ended, leaving a lot of things subjective for us to interpret ourselves, like, for example, what we already know. Reze was a Soviet child who comes from a marginalized background, entirely based on the concept of human instrumentalization. She was raised solely to be a weapon, with no childhood and no basic education. In this context, we can imagine in countless ways what her origins were like and how her entire upbringing unfolded. We can also imagine how rare flowers must have been in the setting she was in, the Soviet winter, right? All of this can add various nuances to our interpretations and can help make this character even more beloved by many. That's why I'll leave the link to this fan-made story in the description as soon as it's available, alright? Hey there, my analysts. Lucca here once again, and this video is going to be a slightly different kind of analysis than usual, especially because I'd say Fujimoto's line of thinking is substantially different from that of other mangaka. So here we'll be looking at hidden meanings behind the character, her interactions, and also all the messages I was able to find within the semiotics of this super fun arc from part 1 of Chainsaw Man. So if you enjoy my content, go ahead and subscribe here and also leave a like. We're almost at 100k here, and I'd be honored to have you join our crew. Starting from just $1.99, basically the price of a coffee, you can become a member and get access to exclusive videos. So don't waste any time. And a shout out as well to all my awesome members. You guys are awesome. Now let's get to the video. Reze is one of the most popular and interesting characters in Chainsaw Man. There's no doubt about it, and I can see that the community has always loved her a lot, and they always want her to come back and appear again in part 2 of the manga. Reze, without a doubt, has a captivating personality. She deals with themes that are very common in the series, like the country mouse and the city mouse, and she also has her own depth as a character. Deep down, behind all the lies she tells others and herself, she's an extremely empty character, just a shell. And what she wants most is to receive genuine, innocent love and live a peaceful life, which is the complete opposite of her inner demon. Fujimoto has already said that he created Reze with the idea of building a character he liked and that everyone else would like too. His main point was that the character had to be captivating. We see that Reze's entire arc comes as a way to bring light into Denji's life after all the events of the first season, which involve Katana Man, Himeno's death, and everything else. Reze appears as a new hope for Denji in the midst of this initial chaos. A captivating, friendly girl who, strangely enough, seems to be interested in him. It's obvious that everyone, whether they want to or not, ends up being suspicious of her for simply being too good for Denji in a world as cruel as Chainsaw Man's, and also at that point in the story, where he wasn't anything special. And in this plot, Reze ends up being a new spark for the entire romantic side of our protagonist. And up until then, this romance had been monopolized by Makima. The idea of this arc was to give Denji new romantic connections, new attachments, and to create a dilemma in his mind. All of it was to make it seem like he had some freedom of choice. And all of this just so Makima could come, take everything from him, and put him back in his place. And once again, she becomes the romantic center of the protagonist and takes control of the entire plot for herself. This arc is a mix of romance, drama, and chaotic action. And now let's talk a bit about the romantic side itself. One of the things that really got to me in this arc was definitely the romance, and honestly when I read it for the first time I didn't even like it that much, but when I started putting everything that happened into words for this script, man, I have to admit I felt it deeply, okay? Reze approaches Denji based on a lie. Everything at the beginning is a lie. Trapped in the rain, they end up in a coincidental encounter with a pretty and friendly girl who seems to appreciate practically everything he says, always with a smile. Alright. By the way, an interesting fact, Denji uses that magic trick of his where he vomits things up, just like at the start of the series, and gives Reze a flower. I didn't really want to get into the correlation between Denji's trick of vomiting things up, because I'm still going to make an entire video about that and talk about what he and Pochita have in common in this sense of vomiting things. But it's quite interesting, this correlation between him vomiting and Pochita's ability to devour things and erase them from existence. But anyway, getting back to the point. The flower that Denji gives to Reze was changed from the manga to the anime, or rather, from the manga to the movie, and there's a good symbolic explanation for this. Originally, the flower was a red daisy, which represents impulsive love, passion, desire, and deep romance, and this flower even reappears at a few later moments in the movie. But the new flower we see at the beginning is a white gerbera, which symbolizes purity, innocence, peace, and new beginnings. It's perfect to illustrate everything that what Reze is trying to simulate at that moment and everything Denji believes she is at that point in the story. Anyway, they end up going to the cafe where Reze works, and she's all smiles with him, laughing at everything he says. It's really fake and in a way that makes it obvious to us in the audience that she's not being genuine, okay? She has a mission there, and we as the audience just don't know what that mission is yet, but it clearly has something to do with Pochita and the fact that Denji is somehow valuable, which makes even more sense later on. Denji is torn in his heart, caught between his sexual urges and his romantic impulses. That's because all the control Makima has exerted up to that point has been to chain him to her alone. However, Reze also stirs Denji's feelings since he has no real experience with love. Any girl who came along and gave him that kind of attention, he would fall in love with. Caught in this inner conflict, he meets Reze again and she's studying. Reze's relationship with studying is also really interesting. That's because she never had that opportunity when she was younger. She was a child from the Soviet Union who was used as a weapon from an early age, and all we know is that her background is marginalized and shrouded in violence. State power, human instrumentalization. Reze was always treated as a mere tool of power against her will. And even education, which is a fundamental individual right, was something she never had access to. And that's one of the things that connects her to Denji. Even though he doesn't see himself that way, Denji also has an extremely marginalized background, which draws identifiable parallels to Reze's own situation. She sees in him someone just as lost as she once was. And that's when they decide to go to the abandoned school, have fun, and pretend they're studying. And so she starts to understand more and more about the guy she was pretending to like. Until she goes there, forms genuine bonds with him, and a spark of hope arises in her to build something real with that boy. In the process of making him fall in love with her, she also slowly ends up falling for him. And everything changes in this pool scene. When they decide to jump into the pool and she says he doesn't need to worry about not knowing how to swim because she'll be there to teach him, that's the moment when Reze truly takes on the role of a partner. She sincerely offers to help Denji and also uses this as a way to understand him better. After all she ever wanted was for someone to have done the same for him in the past. She sees Denji as Denji, not merely as the host of the chainsaw, just as she herself would have liked to be seen as human. It's very beautiful and also interesting to notice that the pool water is both the first moment of sincerity for the character and later on becomes her weakness since water counters the ignitions and explosions of the bomb devil as we see later. And this parallel is really cool, I liked it a lot. Now after the pool scene, it starts to rain, which is quite possibly something coordinated, mainly because of the Typhoon Devil's trap that was being planned and all that. But we end up delving into a dilemma from Aesop's fable, The Country Mouse and the City Mouse. Many times when this fable is told, the moral of the story is that a simple life is worth more than a life full of dangers. But in reality, this fable itself doesn't have such an easy and simple answer. The country mouse has a longer, safer, and more peaceful life, but he ends up eating only his meager meals. On the other hand, the city mouse leads a riskier and much less secure life, but he enjoys much better food and really lives it up, you know? There is no universal truth about which of the two lifestyles is ideal and perfect to follow. Both have their advantages and disadvantages in their own ways. And within the context of Chainsaw Man, Makima is a character who constantly brings this fable into the story since she is someone who plays a lot with the desires and greed of the characters she manipulates. She made Denji develop even greater desires to pursue, new wishes, new dreams, and cravings that at first he didn't have. Even when one of Denji's dreams is extinguished, like his desire to touch breasts, she goes and rekindles that flame. She goes and says no, because it's all a matter of intimacy and it's even better when you know the person and everything else. She keeps manipulating his dreams, making him want even better things each time. She covets his desire and gradually molded him to become more and more of a city rat rather than a country rat like he originally was. At the beginning, that was Denji's essence. He was content with a simple and quiet life, as long as he still had Pochita to hug. However, that gradually started to change, and along with his new devil heart, Denji's humanity also began to fade away. He started feeling less and less emotion and became increasingly dissatisfied with his original situation, always chasing dreams based on material possessions or carnal desires. Denji became completely a slave to desire by the end of the story. And in that sense, Denji also became a city rat, almost entirely. On the other hand, Reze, at her core, is a country mouse, someone who seeks her own peace, independence, and a quiet life. And she finds that in Denji whether she wants to or not. Someone whose essence is very similar to hers from a humble background, without much life experience, someone she could help and also be helped by. Someone she could connect with, be a refuge for, while also seeking refuge herself. Now, while Denji is off daydreaming and wondering whether he likes Reze or Makima more, Reze ends up running into the guy who's serving the Typhoon Devil, or Tornado, whichever you prefer. And she takes him out in a scene that really seems like a reference to that movie, No Country for Old Men, you know? And it's quite possible that it really is a reference, especially since Fujimoto is a huge movie fan, but anyway. The main focus of this scene is the song that Reze sings in Russian. And man, apparently this song just doesn't exist. I don't know where Fujimoto got this song from, if he saw it somewhere specific, created a parody of some Russian lullaby and then made some changes or something like that. But it's quite possible that this song was made specifically for this exact scene. And man, this scene is the very definition of cinema. This is an insanely intriguing song, but I'll talk more about it later in the video so I don't mess up the chronology of things here, okay? But alright. Denji and Reze go out to watch festivals, then head to the top of a hill, and there she makes a proposal. A proposal that's quite suspicious. Reze offers to run away with Denji, and many people think this request doesn't mean much, but I kind of disagree with that. In my analysis, and also my opinion, I believe that Reze's wish is at least partially sincere. She really would like to run away with Denji and start over, just the two of them. In my view, that wasn't basically a trick or a lie, but rather the starting point for what could have been the beginning of their story. However, we have to remember that Denji turns Reze down, and that's pretty bizarre to think about, right? Damn, how do you turn something like that down, right? But Makima did a good job manipulating our boy into thinking he really needs more than he actually has. Denji doesn't just want to run away with Reze, he still wants to keep working and pursue his career. And that means a lot more than it seems at first glance. He works as a public safety devil hunter in a high-risk, high-reward job where he could technically be disposed of at any moment if he steps out of line. Himeno herself had talked about this. On top of that, he's already lost co-workers along the way, and even so, he still wants to keep living on Makima's leash as her subordinate. When he turns Reze down by asking if he couldn't keep seeing her and also keep working at the same time, Reze immediately realizes it's because of another woman, and then she gets really disappointed in Denji for being Makima's little pet. But yes, Reze wouldn't be able to break Denji's city rat mentality that easily, so she decides to set aside her own feelings in that scene and stick to the original plan of just going after the chainsaw's heart. And that's what sets off the whole new conflict thanks to her reveal as the Bomb Devil with a kiss amid the exploding fireworks, which is also pretty symbolic. But now let's talk about this so-called revelation. The design of the Bomb Devil is brilliant, nothing less than that. It perfectly incorporates elements that represent its theme, while also making various allusions to other graphic elements that convey a sense of something predatory, powerful, and at the same time sensual, thanks to the host's striking body. Dynamite, bombs, fuses, all of that was incorporated into her design in a very creative way. She is the perfect blend that easily makes her one of the best designs in the series, in my opinion, of course. All of this, combined with the Sakuga moments added during her combat style, powers, and the different uses of the mechanics we see in the setting, even creating possible combos with the Typhoon Devil. Reze's demonic form contrasts perfectly with the gentle, friendly, and lucid delicacy of her human form, creating a great juxtaposition. We don't even need to mention how powerful she is. In a world overtaken by fear and the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, we can imagine just how powerful Reze is. The very idea of the bomb concept is terrifying, although she was possibly nerfed by the social context caused by the forgetting of the nuclear weapons devil. We can't forget that during the second part of the manga, it was revealed that Pochita devoured the nuclear weapons devil in the past, and that this fear of humanity is also related to bombs and was forgotten. However, Reze did not benefit from this trauma and fear because Pochita devoured it, causing it to be erased from the memory of all human beings. In other words, all the destruction she causes in part 1 is not Reze's full power, or at least not the ideal power she would have if that devil hadn't been erased, since we don't know everything she would be capable of if humanity still remembered the evils that plagued it in the past. We can also notice from her fighting style that she is quite restrained. This arc as a whole almost works like a filler for us, since its beginning and end don't really change the overall experience of the manga that much, at least in terms of chronology. And what do I mean by that? I mean that you could simply skip this entire arc and move on to the next one, and the narrative would still make perfect sense at all times, and honestly I find that pretty interesting. Of course, it's a canonical arc, and it adds a lot to the mindset of Denji, Makima, Angel, and Aki, but if you just skip from chapter 40 to 53, the story will still remain very consistent and you'll hardly miss anything. Now, do I recommend you do that? No, of course not. This arc is amazing, but it's good to know that it's an option. That's also why I thought adapting this arc as a movie was a great idea, because you can watch it or not. And they can still release a second season entirely as an anime, and anyone who doesn't watch the movie won't miss anything in terms of canonical material or anything that would change the story. They won't lose any of the meaning, and I thought that was really good. The most fitting word to describe the battle between Reze and Denji is chaotic. Reze is much more experienced and able to use her powers far more effectively than Denji. She beats him at pretty much everything in that first fight. It even gets a bit comical to see the beating he takes. Others have to help Denji by giving him blood so he can recover and get back into the fight to try again. After all, everyone around there is on Denji's side and on the side of public safety. Everyone except the Typhoon Devil, who at that moment is serving Reze. The battle triggers a huge Shocknado reference, making the fight even more chaotic than before. All of this leads to one more one-on-one between Denji and Reze, where she is defeated by a hug. Denji decides to call it a draw and throws himself into the sea with her, knowing that this way she wouldn't explode. Hugs in this work have a special meaning. Besides being a demonstration of closeness, affection, and understanding, we also see a lot of this in the sincerity of the hugs, whether it's with Pochita at the beginning, where he basically represented Denji's whole world, right? Or even Makima hugging Chainsaw Man, showing that the feeling is genuine, and in fact later on we find out that she is Chainsaw Man's biggest fan, more specifically Pochita's. There's also the whole part involving Nayuta's storyline and everything else, but here hugs are always about sincerely feeling someone's loneliness, and so they fall into the sea together. And in the end, everything turns out fine, since Reze taught Denji how to swim. That plus the fact that the shark helped him out, and of course, right? Pulled them out of the water, but the point is that she wakes up wearing Denji's shirt. Whether she wanted to or not, he took care of her, just like she taught him how to swim. And Denji goes on a long speech about how he's enjoying the life he has, despite all the problems. And he also says he wouldn't feel right turning Reze over to public safety. That's why he brought her back, to let her just run away and live her life. Reze realizes that he still cares about her and tries to distance herself. On page 163 of this same volume, Reze once again puts on a mask of apathy to try to distance herself from Denji. She tells a new lie, claiming that she was just deceiving him the whole time and never felt anything at all for him. She tries to create some distance from him. Now, what's interesting is that Denji doesn't really care much about that and just asks if she wouldn't consider dropping everything and running away with him now. See, this time it's Denji who makes the request, and Reze even tries to pull away once again, implying that she's an assassin and all, but again he doesn't care. He's willing to take the risk. It seems that after the battle, he started to understand more about life, more about himself, and more about this whole situation. And he's willing to take the risk and give up his whole wonderful life just to run away with her. He's willing to risk everything for her because to him, she's worth the risk. She's worth the risk of leaving behind a wonderful life day after day and living just to fight for survival. For him, Reze became someone much more valuable. And this time, it's her who ends up turning him down. But he doesn't give up and keeps insisting, making one last attempt to arrange a final meeting at the same cafe as before so they could run away from everything and everyone together. And then Reze finds herself facing a tense decision. She doesn't get on the train to run away. She also chooses to stay with Denji, but by doing so, walking all the way back to the cafe, hoping to find Renji sitting there, she ends up running into Makima first, who says something quite interesting. "I also like the country mouse." And yes, that's a direct response to that whole conversation between Reze and Denji at the school. In other words, Makima knew everything and had been watching the two of them since the beginning of that encounter. She probably also knew about the Typhoon Devil, knew that Reze was a weapon, knew everything. And in the end, Reze coming back and choosing to stay with Denji made her a direct target for Makima. They would never be able to escape Makima's control and social influence. She is an incredibly difficult character to get away from because of her vast reach and the ways she gets information, whether through her contracts, her own powers, or even political and social influence due to her position in public safety. In the end, Denji and Reze's love was something impossible to realize, because even though both were very willing to be together, there were still those who would go after Denji for his valuable heart. And that's exactly the premise of the next arc, where hunters from all over the world join forces with that goal in mind. Now, Reze's ending is, in quotes, a death, okay? Since she does in fact die at the hands of Makima, and many people think her story ends there, with her death. But the truth is that Reze is immortal, just like Denji and the other weapon devils, the hybrids. She reappears at the end of part 1 as one of Makima's weapons, completely under her control. It's a very sad ending, and we'll talk a bit more about it in just a moment. But now let's finally talk about that Russian song from our Soviet girl. The song has the same name as the chapter in which it appears, which is Jane fell asleep in the church, and in Portuguese that means Jane adormeceu na igreja. The song begins with the lines, "Today is the day of my meeting with Jane, everything is ready. In the morning, we'll go to the church together, have coffee and eat omelets at a cafe. Afterwards, we'll walk through the park. We'll go to the aquarium to see Jane's favorite animals, the dolphins and the penguins. In the afternoon, we'll rest." So what did we do in the morning? Let's talk about it until we remember, but we won't remember. And at night, we'll sleep in the church. Seriously, pay close attention. The song starts off already talking about a possible man going with someone named Jane to the church. That was their main plan for the morning. They went to a cafe and had coffee with omelets. Great, perfect. This obviously references Reze, who worked at a cafe, and that was her initial meeting point with Denji. Alright, so far. But then, after the coffee, did they go to that church? No. After the coffee, they went to the park. For some reason, they went off schedule, just like Denji and Reze simply decided to have fun and go to that abandoned school. That would be their park. But here's where it gets interesting. Then did they go to the aquarium to see penguins and dolphins? Okay, that literally happens in part 2 with Asa and Denji, right? And the song says, "In the afternoon we'll rest." So what did we do in the morning? For some reason, they don't remember what they did in the morning. It's like they did something really wild and then they sleep and, well, wake up as if nothing happened, you know? And at night we'll sleep in the church. That's the end of the song. A new plan, sleep in the church. Okay, let's break down this symbolism a bit. Reze is a country mouse. She wants peace and a quiet life, and that's paradoxical since she's the opposite of tranquility, the little firecracker demon. She is a weapon, both metaphorically and literally. But even so, she still wants to rest, to find peace. The song is, at the same time, a playful allusion to everything Reze has always wanted, and also about the journey she built with Denji throughout the arc. The initial plan, to go to the church in the morning, was a lie. They didn't go to the church. Just as Reze also lied about Denji being just a means for her to gain power. They go to the cafe, then leave and have fun, go through several wonderful events, have a disagreement until they rest and come to understand each other. Reze comes to her conclusion and chooses her human side, leaving everything behind to be with Denji, just as she had suggested during her confession. The ending of the song about sleeping in the church at night may refer to the idea of a new promise being made, where sleeping in the church could allude either to her finally being able to rest peacefully and in tranquility, or even making a reference to her going to Denji and meeting Makima, who defeats her and takes control of Reze's body, as if she had been erased or fallen into a deep sleep while being controlled, of course, alluding to the title of the song, which is Jeanne fell asleep in the church. She slept while going to the promised place. And I thought that was really cinematic, okay? Now the last thing we'll look at is the fact that she was used as a weapon by Makima in her final confrontation against Denji. She actually fought very little. We have only a few action scenes with her, both against Pochita and against Denji, and after the fight, nothing, never anything about Reze again. If I had to guess what happened, I'd say she was captured by public safety after Makima's defeat and will probably be used by Japan in the next war that's coming. That is, unless she was traded to another nation, of course, or sent back to Russia. The war in part 2 is about to begin and she would easily be an important asset for any nation involved. But yes, Fujimoto is going to wait, okay? He's going to take his time and set things up to bring her back at a very specific moment. And let's talk a little about that future. Will Reze return in part 2 of Chainsaw Man? Well, it's a fact that our guy Fujimoto has already talked about how much he likes to leave things open and reuse them in future arcs. But will Reze really come back to grace us with her presence? In my opinion, it would be amazing to see her as the Bomb Devil side by side with Asa Mitaka as the War Devil. That could make things even harder for Denji, and would also be a cool way to bring the character back. And of course, it would give her a new dynamic with the new main antagonist of the story. When Makima was the main antagonist, Reze was controlled and couldn't be herself, completely subdued by the Control Devil. Now with Yoru as the main antagonist, we have the chaos of war and the War Devil, a chaotic territory that fits perfectly with Reze's other nature as the Bomb Devil. It would be a really interesting parallel to observe. Of course, we still have a lot of questions to be answered, like the issue of the nuclear weapons devil and how it could be connected to Yoru, and whether it might have some link to Reze in some way, right? Bombs and nuclear weapons, we know there's a correlation. But we'll see all of this explored more deeply during part 2 of Chainsaw Man. Fujimoto has also said that he likes the idea of romantic partners continuing to exist in others' imaginations as a kind of curse. Yeah, the author is pretty strange, but I wonder what that means. Does he intend to leave Reze's fate open, always making us believe she could show up and come back? Or is this so-called curse going to come back to haunt our not-so-bright protagonist? Well, I don't know, I think she will come back. I'd bet that Fujimas is going to bring her back in a chaotic and very opportune future. At least that's what I hope. And well, that's it about Reze. Guys, amazing movie, it's going to be in theaters. Let's go watch it, let's show our support. I really doubt it'll surpass Demon Slayer this year, but hey, that's fine, right? Demon Slayer made history, Kimetsu is hopeless. Damn the foldable. But that's it, we're together. Thank you very much for watching the video this far. Subscribe to the channel, like it, leave a comment, you know how it is, right? We're together, thanks, and bye.